Chapter 8. James journeyed back to his dorm room from the girls' apartment was the opposite than the last time. The man who was hurting never felt so out of sync with the world. The bright moonlight from the last night of the full hunter's moon seemed dim to him. The words coming out of people's lips sounded dubbed, and it was a strain for him to comprehend what they were talking about. James was unaware that he stepped in a puddle of water. The man lost in pain did not even notice the strong stench of skunkweed coming from the stoner's basement apartment he walked by. James's foul mood was not contagious. Other people were invulnerable to his feelings. To them, for all intents and purposes, he did not exist. He was as unique to them as Starbucks. Nothing more than another one of the faceless people they swore they never walked past. James felt the disconnect, for he was fuming at Lilith, Gordon, Lexi, and Cara. The man, who felt betrayed by those four, had good reasons in his mind for them not to be in his good graces. Lilith was trying everything in her power to make his life miserable. The gourd attacked him verbally just over what he was wearing. Lexi defended how her man put Sarah down, and also Cara's date. Cara was stringing him along once again. What hurt the most was Cara. She made him feel like Charlie Brown after he once again missed kicking the football Lucy Van Pelt pulled away. How could he have let himself fall yet again for what he perceived was her playing games with his heart? James' anger at Lilith and Gordon was justified. Those two were deliberately trying to cause Sarah harm. They might not know that Sarah was real, but their actions were intentionally demeaning to him. Even if there was no real malice in their actions, James had the right to be angry at them. This was for their actions did not lift people up but put them down. James was also right to stand his ground on not hearing out Gordon. Those words were negative and could only be taken in that manner, so saying they were a joke did not change the meaning of the words. James' ill feeling towards Lexi and Cara were misplaced and misguided. They were understandable, for he did not have the entire story, but they were misplaced and misguided nonetheless. If James knew the date Cara was on was one in name only, and Lexi's laughter came from her being nervous with the tension between the gourd and Sarah, he wouldn't have those misplaced and misguided ill feelings towards two of his closest friends. James' defensiveness made him see the worst in Cara and Lexi. The man who felt like he was assaulted emotionally by four friends tonight felt vulnerable. This was where he was so close to finding out he was not as real as he thought and needed to protect his new emerging ego. It was also for he knew he had to protect himself when showing his new personality traits. He felt they were more of who he really was than how he'd portrayed himself before. With him being protective of Sarah, James might not be open to hear the entire story. There was a good probability his ill feelings would not quickly go away when he found out everything. It would be for James would also have to believe what he was told. How Cara and Lexi's prior actions were perceived by him, the man who was protecting the female he really was, would have to be shrewd to take those two's words without proof. People who are defensive tend to be heedful towards others who have hurt them. By the time James made it to his dorm he was extremely tired. Being as mad as he was for that prolonged period of time was exhausting. Even if he was not tired, all he would want to do was sleep right now. James did not want to deal with anyone, not even his roommate Dylan. There was a small fear that Dylan might also let him down, like those four did, or he might try to be supportive of James. As James opened his dorm room door, he laughed, thinking which reaction from his good friend would be worse. Rejection was bad, but he was used to it tonight, but dealing with Dylan comforting others was never a pretty sight. Dylan got very tense when he had to console others, and that just made everyone witnessing uncomfortable. The man whose pillow was calling to him was relieved when the lights were off in his room as he entered it. James changed and just went into his bed. Sleep was the best way for him not to deal with becoming Sarah. After dinner, Lilith and Cara were escorted by their dates to Cafe 210 for a couple of after-dinner drinks on the patio. Jason knew a bouncer, so he was able to get a table quickly when a group of girls left. He was a little dismayed when Cara disapproved of how he was trying to impress her. That dismay quickly turned into him seeing an opportunity. If his date was that caring about how strangers were treated, just think how she would care about him when he talked about being stood up by the fictional girl he could never have. If he played it right, he would have Cara in his bed by the end of the next date. As the guys went to get the drinks, Lilith leaned in and said to Cara, "Don't you love how a real man's ass looks like in a nice pair of dress slacks?" Lilith overplayed her hand with another snide remark about James/Sarah. Cara did not forget about the first one in the women's restroom, and was just going to mention it, in passing, after the date. She was not as mad about it as time passed by. Now, though, she had to defend her friend, for her anger returned, and she had the chance. "Lilith, quit talking down on James. Your little comments attacking his manhood are not going to make me not finally have that date with him. All they are doing is making me think you still do not support him." Lilith tried to play innocent. "I did not say anything about Sarah. You are reading too much into what I said." Judge Cara did not believe the testimony the defendant gave her. "Quit bullshitting me, Lilith. You have been passive-aggressive about James all night. You just did it now by calling him Sarah. We are having a serious talk now, and you have not been trying to see him as Sarah, so call him James." "I wanted to say something in the bathroom, but you quickly ran to the cover of using your phone so I could not. So just quit it." Lilith knew when to pull back, and this was the time. "Cara, I am sorry. I was just joking, for even with supporting James with this project, I still see what he is doing as a joke. You know I have a dark sense of humor and would not do anything to hurt him. Lilith, just quit it now, and also quit trying to justify putting down our friend. Also, quit having that dark sense of humor around me. You go on the warpath if you even think someone makes a joke about you." Lilith was losing her religion with Cara and was doing her best not to show her disdain for her friend. Cara had no right to talk to her like that, and Lilith was not going to take it anymore. Enough damage was done to Cara and James' friendship, so Lilith was going to let Cara have it. As the lady who was pitting friends against each other was about to escalate the heat in the discussion, the guys showed back up. This quickly cooled Lilith off. How Jason was playing Cara reminded her how well the long play can be for making permanent changes. "Come on, Lexi," he was acting like a snowflake. "Oh Gord, just drop it. Calling James Jamie, and now using a female pronoun to mock him is not funny. Yeah, James might have overreacted, but you need to quit it now. I agreed with you that he was wrong and you were right." The Gord was not going to drop it. He did not like how James pointed out his connection with his closest friends at college was not organic. Also, the Gord really did not like how James said something which could upset the ecology of his relationship with Lexi. He had Lexi content with having their social life totally revolve around him. "Sweetie, it was not might have," he did. "This is not about me. This is about that man putting you down. How dare he say that I put the frat above you? You understand that I have my commitments which I made before we got together, and me spending the time at the frat is about our future being better. I do this for our future. James is putting you down by thinking you let me walk all over you, and I just do not think he is as close of a friend as you say he is. He should be happy that you have the person you want. He is not. Is he still trying to get with Cara? Like that is going to happen. She is out on a date. Also, he is not in a relationship, so he should not be giving out advice. If you listened to him, we would have had a big fight over nothing. What we have is great and needs no work. Honey, he did not mean anything, it came out wrong. He was wrong with how he said it. I should have never told you. Now that the gourd was getting Lexi to agree with him, he was going to try to get what he really came over for, some action. When he started to put the moves on, Lilith and Cara came in. Just as luck, nothing went right this night. With those two there, Lexi will want to hear how their date went. As the girls were greeting each other, the gourd got up and excused himself. On his way out of the apartment, he thought he would call the villain to try to salvage the night. Cara was hoping to see Sarah there so they could talk. It was not that late and she wondered why her friend was not there. Is Sarah all right? Lexi agreeing with the gourd had already affected how she remembered the situation between those two. It did not help that Sarah blew her off when Lexi told her she wanted to call. Yeah, the gourd stopped over and Sarah was a little bitchy towards him and left. Cara did not like that the gourd saw Sarah, she knew he would have made smart comments. Lexi, what was the gourd doing here and did he provoke Sarah with making fun of her? Lilith saw a way to get Cara more on her side. The gourd probably did what I did with Sarah, joked around, and she took it too personal. She needs to lighten up or else she is going to find herself having no friends. Lexi wanted to downplay the gourd's comments. She always wanted to see her man in the best possible light. Agreeing with Lilith would help Lexi convince herself that the gourd did nothing wrong. Lilith, you are right. Sarah just overreacted to your harmless jokes and did that tonight with the gourd. There was no malice in yours or the gourd's words. Cara knew exactly what her roommate was doing and was going to show her how wrong she was. Really, Buck? Jokes which put people down are harmless if not said in malice. Buck was a nickname which Lexi had growing up. The name came from her having an upper protrusion, an overbite, while in grade school. She hated it, but there was nothing she could do to stop it. When she mentioned how much she hated it, the mean girls would just use the name more. Lexi was hurt that her friend would bring it up. That pain made her not see the point Cara was trying to make. Pain beget pain, so Lexi wanted to make sure Cara knew how much she hurt Sarah with the date tonight. Oh Cara, that is not fair, you know that I hate that. You should not use something which was told in confidence as a joke. Anyway, if you did not go out on that date tonight, Sarah would not have been so sensitive. Are you even planning on having that date with James, or are you just going to string him along again? It was not a real date. I went along just to help Lilith for she needed a wing woman to see a guy she likes. Lilith was sitting back, waiting for the right time to add to the tension. She knew it was best to let her two friends do the work of causing more discord between not only James and them, but those two. The less she said, the less likely people would figure out they were just her pawns, her instruments to teach James that clothes do not make a person. This also held true with the more she could get those two at each other's throats. After James learned what Lilith wanted him to learn, Lilith would help them repair the damage to their relationships. This was the right time to add to the tension between them. Cara, you could have said no, all I did was ask you. Lexi took Lilith's side as a token for her standing up for the gourd. Yeah, Cara, it was not like Lilith forced you to say yes. Lilith, you asked me to help you and I did. That was not a real date and you know it. It not being a real date was one of the reasons I went. Lilith wanted to entrench Lexi more to her side. If it was not really a date, then why did you let Jason pay for your meal? Why did you share off of his plate and let him share off of yours? Lexi was still hurting from Cara bringing up that horrible childhood nickname, so she added, Come on Cara, you are just a cock tease, and you teased that poor man, who had no chance tonight, and you've been teasing James for over 2 years now." Of course, Lexi did not mean what she said. Cara's roommate was hurting and was not thinking straight. That did not matter to Cara. The sweet girl took it to heart. "I never led James on, we have just had misconnections. This time we will have a date. If not, I am not going to be dating any man for a while. Lexi, you know how bad I felt with Mickey, and James was the one made me feel fine for following my heart. He comforted me when I broke his heart. So don't you dare say I am a cock tease and I am playing games with his heart. I was not ready for him then, and the sad part is I might not get to. You calling me that is just you trying to deflect for how the gourd came over here, saw Sarah, and said mean things. You do not want to admit that the gourd was like Lilith, and could not take it when Sarah gave him some of his own medicine." Those words stunned Lexi, for they started to make her see the events earlier that night, how they occurred, and not to put her man in the best possible light. With her not saying anything, Cara went into their room. Lexi was going to follow her friend in so they could talk it over, but Lilith whispered in her ear, like the serpent in the Garden of Eden. "Lexi, don't feel bad, the gourd did nothing wrong. Cara is just jealous you have a good man and all she does is lead men on. She cannot form a good solid relationship like you and your man have." As Lilith was telling Lexi what she wanted to hear to feel better, Cara was in bed. She was thinking of how horrible the night was for Sarah. At that moment, to the sad lady, her hurting from fighting with her best female friend and the confusion about her sexuality did not matter. She was hurting the worst for Sarah. The remorseful woman knew she should have known better than to help Lilith. It would have just been better to stay in. She knew that Sarah was going to come over. Spending time with Sarah/James was so much better than doing anything else, to her. Dylan did not know exactly what went on yesterday, but he's sure of one thing, he did not like it. James was fast asleep when he came home a little before midnight and was sleeping in on chicken and waffle brunch Sunday. Any other Sunday McElwain Dining Commons was serving his favorite Southern meal, James would be dragging Dylan out of bed, so those two were first in line. James got 4 calls on his cell phone this morning, and Sleeping Beauty declined them all without even looking at who they were from. That was not James. He would answer his phone if someone called. If by the off chance he just let the phone go to voicemail, Dylan's roommate would first see who called. Then a little past 9 Lexi, then Cara both called him, first begging Dylan to wake up James, and then imploring him to make James call them back. Dylan made them some coffee and woke James up. James just taking the coffee without adding any conversation was another bad sign for Dylan. The man who was worried about his friend did not like how distant his friend was today. The last couple of weeks James has been a bright ray of sunshine. Dylan liked it, in fact he hated how much he liked it, for it gave him the last thing he wanted, a crush on a straight man. Still, the farm boy would much rather have his infatuation with James grow stronger than to see him down. Dylan's uneasiness about James grew when the man he fancied a little became more withdrawn hearing the girl's messages. The uneasiness diminished when James perked up hearing the new subject Dylan brought up, the upcoming dance. The man who wanted more than friendship made sure he did not call it a date. Dylan did not want to fool himself about what next Saturday was. James would correct him each time. For the project, it had to be treated as a date, so call it one. Dylan did have enough discipline to not let his hopes be built up with how insistent James was about calling it a date. They both knew it was that in name only. Dylan was a pragmatist, and his gaydar never even beeped a little around James. Also, even if the man of his dreams was into both men and women, Dylan saw how James looked at Cara. Dylan knew his friend was head over heels for that woman. James was feeling better. Dylan's support reached deep into his psyche and gave Sarah hope that she was going to be able to find herself. She knew last night was just a setback, and if she was going to be, there would be many more of them, along with many more victories. To get to be who you are, people need to feel some pain. Remembering that personal growth sometimes comes from pain helped James with embracing Sarah, and in some ways they were melding into one. Just as Sarah found she had more access into James' subconscious, there was a knock on the door. The man, who now had a lady roaming free in his head again, told Dylan he'd get it. At the door was Lilith with a grin on her face. "James, it is so rude not to return my call. I wanted to tell you the great news about last night. Cara and Jason, that real man she had the date with, they planned another one for this Saturday. Aren't you just happy for them? I guess you two can talk about the men who will be taking you out on Saturday at the dinner Friday night. That is unless you and her play dress up again this week." If Lilith would have foreseen the response to the message she delivered, she would have never set her plans into motion last night. As she waited to see the life drain out of Sarah's face, instead, a huge smile came across it. "Oh Lilith, I slept in. You need to learn to give people time to return your phone call. We are not at your beck and call. I am happy for Cara that she found a great guy. I have been happy the last 2 times this has happened, so why not this one? Her being happy is more important to me than if I get her. I might not be the right person for her. Lastly, I am looking forward to hearing all about Jason, and it would be great to talk about the man who is escorting me to the dance on Saturday. He is smart, charming, cares about others, and you would have to admit, a stud. So thank you for dropping by with the great news about Cara. I am going back to my coffee. If we had another seat in our room I would invite you in, but sadly we don't." Sarah closed the door without letting Lilith give her a farewell salutation. Lilith was fuming about how she was denied, gloating over the victory she'd had, and that James got the last word. The fuming was about to get worse when she heard Dylan say, "Hey Lily, hold up, I want to speak with you." Oh, how she hated people calling her Lily, and Dylan knew that. People called her either Lilith or Lil. She hated the long E sound at the end of a name. To her the sound just patronized a name. It should only be used for children. Lilith showed she was not amused. "Dilly, you know not to call me by that name." Dylan chuckled to himself at Lilith's feeble attempt to irk him. It was hard to do so, for he already was. "Lily, I know you do not want to be called that, but I do not respect the wishes of people who do not know how to treat their friends." Lilith was ready for a confrontation. She was sick of doing everything behind the shadows. "You want to talk about how to treat your friends? Let me tell you what I think about how James is treating me with this project. It doesn't matter what I think about what you think. For some reason you do not like the project. James is trying to understand what a woman goes through in life, and experience it also. He wants to become more empathetic, and you shit on him. Yeah, you've been shitting on him. He is a good guy. I would not be shocked if somehow you were behind Cara getting with this Jason, for you are trying to hurt James. I do not want to know why, but I will tell you this. You lost me as a friend. James told you that you are not welcome in our home, so you lost him also. If I know the other girls, you are getting close to losing them as friends. It might not seem that way to you, for you think it is working out how you want. Trust me, it will backfire on you. It is for one reason: they are all good people. I thought you were, but how you've been acting, I know I was wrong." After informing Lilith what he thought of her, the only way that farm boy knew, he turned around. He was not going to hear her out to emphasize he washed his hands of her until she changed. "Oh, Dylan, I think you are wrong." Dylan could not resist turning around and getting the last word. The only reason why was for he knew if he interrupted her with what he was about to say, it would emphasize even more he was done with her. "Lilith, like I said before, it doesn't matter what you think." Lexi could not get into the zone when on the treadmill. She kept looking at her phone to be ready to answer if James called her back. Seeing how long a minute went when someone was waiting for something which might not happen made her usual enjoyable workout seem like an endless chore. The worst was, she could go for that runner high right now. What was a great evening seeing a side of her friend she never thought James had, quickly imploded into those two having a disagreement and then another one with one of her dearest friends, Cara. If only James did not take the gourd joking around so serious, this would not have happened. Lexi believed she was being the bigger person, for she was not expecting an apology from James. In fact, the lady who wanted to uncross the lines was going to tell her friend that she understood why James was so touchy. Cara was on a date with another man. Lexi liked the narrative which Lilith helped her form about the events from last night, for it kept her from focusing on the real issue. The gourd needed to mature and quit being a man-child. Her man was still the same boy he was when those two met freshman year. His emotional growth was in suspended animation from spending too much of his time and energy in his all-boys clubs. Lexi did not want to think about the truth, for the lady who had a boy for a boyfriend did not want to admit to herself she was enabling her boy's arrested development. After the workout, Lexi kept on waiting for the phone call which was never going to come. While Dylan was forewarning Lilith of the cost of her actions, James was coming to terms with what he said to Lilith. This acceptance was being helped by Sarah. James was obsessed over a choice of one word, person, and also calling Dylan a stud. He'd said person, instead of man. To many, that would not be a big deal, they were just words. It just struck him as odd, for when talking about who Cara was seeing, man would have been more appropriate. If the man who was merging with his true essence would have said stud before he awakened his true self, that would have freaked him out. James never thought of a man in a sexual manner. He still did not, but Sarah wanted to explore who she was. It was no big deal to her, for it was the truth. Dylan had rugged good looks and was built. Sarah knew she was not heterosexual, for she loved Cara in the same manner as James. She wanted to spend the rest of her life with her giggle twin, and wanted to be with her in the bedroom. With her dream lady being unattainable right now, Sarah was going to explore more of her sexuality. If she had Cara, knowing more about her sexual preference would not matter, for the lady, who was helping her male side come to terms with not being real, would be with the person she loved. James knew that he had to keep on sharing the new side of him with others, so he was going to take a chance. He was going to show Sarah to Dylan. The man who still did not know what was going on internally only saw it as showing his dear friend the side only the girls had seen. Now, with him not being on the best of terms with three of them, James needed to find others to be Sarah around. Dylan came in and was relieved to see James even more of his new self. The reason was that he was actually looking at Sarah. "Hey James, I had to tell Lilith something, sorry about that. Are you ready to go to brunch?" "Dylan, sit down, I think we should talk first." "Dude, we can talk at brunch, come on, I know how much you love chicken and waffles." Sarah thought for a second, should she tell Dylan to call her Sarah? It would help her be more free in not putting on the act of being James. She thought better, for it would complicate the talk. Plus, it was best to ease Dylan into it, hell it was best to ease herself into it, for Sarah did not fully understand who she was. "We could, but I'd much rather talk here. It is personal, and I would not be comfortable with the chance that anyone could accidentally eavesdrop into our conversation." It will only take a couple of minutes, then we can get that yummy brunch. Sure, dude. Sarah did cringe, hearing herself being called dude. She was not a dude. James barely was a dude. Still, it was best not to correct Dylan. Keeping this talk simple was the best course of action. Dylan, I think you noticed some slight changes in my personality in the last couple of weeks. Dylan's answer was the blush which covered his face. He tried to downplay it with a simple yeah as an answer. While this project has opened up a side of me which I never knew I had, I like it. It feels more natural being that person, instead of who I was. Well, James, I like it also. You seem more alive and happy. I am not saying you were a mope before. I am saying you are more interactive with life. It fits you. While I am happy that you said that. For it seems like Lilith does not like it, or the gourd. Dylan rolled his eyes hearing the gourd. Why would James even tell that immature punk about Sarah? Why did you tell him about this project? You knew he would not understand. Oh, Dylan, I did not. He just happened to stop by Lexi's last night. He called her when he was at the door and surprised both of us. He acted how you would expect him to, and got mad when I fired back. His jokes were demeaning. It would not have been bad if he made himself the butt of some jokes at the same time, as if he would ever do that. So that is why Lexi called you, and asked you to have me call her. This is something which needs to be talked about in person, not over the phone or via emails. I will talk with her about it the next time we see each other. Why James was down was very clear to Dylan. If you don't mind me asking, what was Lilith talking about, with Cara going on a date last night? Dylan was ready to pick Sarah's spirit up when it went down from thinking about, yet again, not getting the girl she wanted to be with. He did not like having to ask that question, but knew it needed to be out in the open. Sarah casually said, I was mistaken in thinking that me and her were going to have a date after the project. I read too much into her saying we would talk about going out at that time. I was down, but thinking on it, I am not man enough for her. James, just not fitting the stereotypical model of what a man is does not make you less of a man. If that were true, then I am not a man. I am a man who happens to want to be with other men. You are a man who has high emotional intelligence and is not afraid to show it. You are wrong, yes you are different, but that does not make you any less of a man. Here's why I am not man enough for her. Lexi and Cara really treated me like I was Sarah, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed how they talked differently to me when I was Sarah compared to before. How they were more open with me about their feelings. It felt good being accepted as one of the girls. No, it felt natural. Sarah quickly stopped speaking right then. She knew she went too far in admitting that out loud. She was busted by her protector, James, and knew it was futile to try to hide from him. The fear set in of her being put into permanent solitary confinement by the protector she created. Dylan's matter-of-fact manner of just accepting Sarah kept James from revoking her parole. James, it is fine if that feels natural. That is who you are. Who cares if some people cannot accept it? You have always been a wonderful person, and the last couple of weeks you have even become a better one. So don't fret, you and Lexi will patch things up. Cara, if she cannot see what she is missing with you, then it is her loss. Sarah thought back about how Dylan was always tense when talking about emotions, and laughed. Like Dylan said, he was all man. Dylan dealt with emotions with actions, not words. Yet he handled talking to Sarah better than any bartender could. Dylan got a little tense hearing the laughter. He felt it was dismissive, and his apprehensiveness came from his fear that people would not take what he said about feeling serious. "Don't laugh, everything I said was true." Sarah so wanted to kiss that lovable lunk on the cheek, but knew it would be too feminine. "Oh, you big lunk, I am laughing at how well you handled this. You usually get all tense and start to be flustered. Then you stutter your words and just keep saying you know what I mean over and over again. You did great, and seeing you do so made me happy." Dylan blushed again. He also found it cute that Sarah called him a lunk. Oh, how he would love to be her lunk. That was until he found out she was a woman and not a man. "Well, this is what I mean. You always try to bring out the best in people, and now you are even coaxing it out me. Now let us go get brunch." Cara could not take Sarah/James still not returning her call. Cara thought about how she saw both James and Sarah at the same time in the person she wanted to talk to. She was starting to wonder how much of Sarah was just James being himself and how much of James was an act to hide from the world. Wondering who her friend really was much better than thinking of how bad she messed up by just not being upfront with Sarah/James. In trying not to have her friend worry about the certainty of the date, she put doubt in Sarah/James' mind. Her sneaking around made the innocent dinner come off as something it was not. Her phone rang and she quickly answered it. She knew it was James and felt there was no time for a conversation. She needed to get her side out right away. "Hiya, Sarah. Sorry, I meant James. This is serious, so I am going to use your real name. James, you have to believe me, that was not a date last night with that man." Sarah was disappointed in Cara. She was fine with her friend seeing a man. It was what was best for her. "Cara, call me Sarah. That is who I am to you now. Even after the project is over, I know that is who I will always be to you. I like it, we are so much closer now. Please do not lie to me, I know it was a date and it went great. I also know you have another one with Jason next Saturday. I am happy for you, he is much better of a man for you than I am. I do not have a date with him on Saturday, and he is not a better man for me than you. Lilith told me, it is fine. I just wish you were honest with me about not having the same feelings for me as I have for you." Lilith lied. "Oh, Cara, then what are you doing next Saturday? It is fine that you have a date. Sarah, you have to believe me, it is not a date. Like it was only you and Lilith hanging out last night? I did not know she set me up when I told you what we were going to do. You also did not tell me last night either, before going on the date. It is fine that you found a man you like. You are becoming my closest friend, I want you to be happy. He is a better person for you than I am. Don't say that. It was not a date. How many times do I have to say that? You can say that all you want, you cannot change the fact it was. You hid it from me not to hurt my feelings. You having it, and finding a good man does not hurt me. You not admitting it is. I can take it, I took it before. Sarah, please believe me, I have no date on Saturday. I am going out to dinner with some friends. That is all. Jason, the man you had a date with last night, is one of them. Cara knew what it looked like to Sarah and could not blame her for seeing what was not there. Instead of trying to convince her with words, Cara was going to use actions. I am going to get going, Sarah, you have to believe me, it was not a date. Bye, Cara, I will talk to you on Friday. I will call you after I take care of some stuff. Talk with you on Friday, Cara. Cara did not want to wait until Friday to clear this up with Sarah/James. The lady who figured out she was played by Lilith from the phone call, could not explain the truth to the person she wanted to see it yet. She had to make sure there was no date with Jason, and hope that Sarah was open to hear her out right away. Cara first had to tell the mistress manipulator the cost of her little stunt, the end of their friendship. This pawn was going to control her own moves from now on. Audrey was driving back from a nice weekend visit with her family. Even with having a great time catching up with her parents, younger brother and sisters, she wanted to go home. It was going to be nice to get back to university feeling this recharged. The aspiring doctor would be able to hit the books with new vigor and desire. Seeing her family reminded her of all the sacrifice her parents made so their children were set up in the best possible manner to succeed. They put aside material hopes and desires to live the true American dream. That their children would be better off than they were. Even discounting her hunger to maintain her place on top of the dean's list, Audrey had another reason she wanted to be back at school, to see how Sarah was doing. Audrey was amazed at how much James has changed as a person, yet remained the same. If the lady who was supporting her friend in becoming who he was did not see it for herself, she would have never thought that contradicting thought was true. The best way to describe it, to Audrey, was James' energy was more feminine now than masculine. It was subtle and so natural that James did not come off as what most people thought was an effeminate man, weak and hysterical. He actually was coming off stronger, with a kinder, gentler, more compassionate demeanor. It was early Sunday afternoon when Audrey came back to an empty apartment and hit the books right away. She was expecting either Cara or Lexi being there to give her an update. Her backup plan was to call Sarah, but thought better of it. Hearing the expected good news would be a great reward to give herself after brushing up on her organic chemistry. Giving herself any reward to look forward to after studying that boring subject was a great motivator. After enjoying a nice brunch with Dylan, Sarah went for a stroll by herself. The lady who now was getting more control of her life used the walk to clear her head some. It felt good that she was accepting she was not who she thought she was. Life was good before, but the glimpses of how life was going to be looked so much more enticing. She could not wait to embrace who she was even more. Even with coming to terms that her and Cara would never be, she had so many questions to answer, some of those were not even asked yet. To find the answers, Sarah started to look back on the little stories of her life as James. If there was any hints in those tales, that her perception of reality was only really shadows on a cave wall. One person's name kept on coming up, her cousin Sally Bunker. The lady who was digging in the dirt of the archaeology site which was her past found it odd the artifact she was drawn to the most was a cousin she was not close to. They did spend a lot of time together as toddlers, but Sally's mom and her brother, James' dad, had a falling out. The fight between the brother and sister had to be bad, for they still were not on speaking terms, and at the few family function both of their families were at, their children were forbidden to mingle. So Sarah kept on asking how could Sally have been so important? The reason why Sally was so important was the same reason as the falling out. Marcus Young caught his son in a dress while playing with dolls. James and Sally used to be close. They would play in her room, and one day James asked Sally if he could wear one of her dresses. James just wanted to. Sally saw nothing wrong with it, so she gave him one. After James put on the dress, Sally was really happy. This was for James quit asking for them to play with the army men he brought over, and suggested they have tea. He even told her to call him Sarah. After a couple of times, Marcus saw his son acting and dressed like a little girl, and flipped out. He scared both of them badly. They both cried for how out of control James' dad was. They saw it as an adult having a temper tantrum, and knew how out of control toddlers became when having one. Gloria Bunker came running up to the room to see what was wrong, and got into it with her brother. She made sure her big brother knew he had no right to yell at any child, especially her child like he did. She also made sure her big brother knew that he was not welcome in her house. James was traumatized by losing Sarah's first friend, his father berating him, having to repeat "I am a boy" until his voice was hoarse, and the spanking he got. That spanking broke the skin and James could not sit down comfortably for over a week. The physical, emotional, and psychological pain made James repress those happy memories, and also his true female self. Marcus did make James, but little did the father who wanted his son to stay a son know that he was just making Sarah strong enough to stand up to him when the time was right for her to be. Sarah was content that she found a good start to find out the truth about her past. She trusted her intuition, for it felt talking to Sally was the right course of action. The time was not right to contact Sally. Sarah had to make it through next weekend. The lady who was close to deconstructing a mystery knew that she had to be prepared for any revelations Sally had to offer. That knowledge would show some of the reality which had been casting the shadows on the cave wall Sarah had been looking at her entire life. Lilith was sitting in the Women's Student Union offices when the door flung open and she saw Cara barge in. Cara, at that moment, was a force Lilith did not want to reckon with. Lilith knew she had to play nice, for she'd made a mistake. The lady who wanted to hurt James went in for the kill too quickly on her target, for she could not wait to gloat, and it backfired. Now she needed to bide her time to regroup. Her goals were still proceeding forward, but Sarah's resolve, and Dylan being on to her were little setbacks. Just have the others continue being puppets and everything would turn out fine. Her energy had to be used to keeping the friendship between Lexi, Cara, and James strained. Why did you lie to James? Lilith was genuinely confused from the question. The lady who built a maze of deceit did not know what lie her accuser was talking about, asked, "Calm down, what are you talking about? Don't play innocent with me. You know what I am talking about. Calm down, Cara, I can tell you are mad. That is why I am not giving you the response which you deserve, with you raising your voice at me. You told James the first had a date with Jason this Saturday. Why did you make that up?" "I did not make anything up, Cara, you do have a date with him. Jason clearly said it is a date and you agreed with him. I went to talk with James, for you told me to clear up the mess and with you agreeing to a date, I said that to him. I only agreed to go to dinner again, with that yes, you knew that. You were being complacent to suit wanting to mess with James. I was going to dinner with you three to talk with Jason. He is a nice guy and needs someone to talk with him about Rhoda, that girl he cannot have, but wants. Well, I thought it was a date, you said yes, and even with how distant you were I could tell you had chemistry. Sharing from each other's plate? I took it that you like him. I cleared up that it was not a date last night. I took you being all defensive for Lexi finally called you out on being a cock tease. I can't believe she used that term to describe a friend. Lilith's little trick of trying to distract Cara from her original point and steer the anger away from her did not work. Well, Lilith, it is simple, so there is no confusion. I will not be going out with you on Saturday. Give me Jason's number so I can call to inform him I am not going. You should tell him in person. Fine, tell me where he lives and I will. I don't know. Then give me his number and I will call right now. You are overreacting, just like James did. You two do not even have a date, and you are going to let him control who you spend time with. I see you are such a modern woman. Lilith, just give me the number. Lilith texted Jason's number to Cara. Fine, there you go. Please think it over before you do so. I need you there so it is not a solo date with Roger. I trust you to be my wing woman, even without you trusting me. Lilith did not even notice that she used the wrong name for the guy she was supposed to want. Lilith, his name is Robert. That tells me for sure you do not want him. You set me up to hurt James. I am freaking done with you. You are being very cruel to James for no reason. You hate what he is doing so bad you are hurting others. I am freaking done with you. Cara stormed out as strong as she came in, and Lilith was shocked at the venom in Cara's words. She started to wonder if she could smooth things out with her friend in a couple of days. Then she wondered it was even worth trying to. Cara was under the delusion that James was not mocking their gender. Lilith did not need someone like that in her life. Audrey took a drag from her cigarette while soaking in all the information she just learned from Lexi. The gourd came over when James was dressed as Sarah, and he was attacked by Sarah. The reason for the unprovoked attack was Sarah was upset about Cara having a date. Cara and James were not going to have their long-awaited date. Lilith and Cara went on a double date, and lastly, Sarah was mad at Lexi for no good reason. Audrey did not say anything, but she knew one thing: there was more going on here than what Lexi knew and told her. The best thing she could do was not say anything until she could piece together how this came about. Even with not having much of a picture, she had a pretty good idea who was behind all this chaos: Lilith.